Welcome! Check out the safety tips and be sure to subscribe to the channel right here. Thanks for watching.
I need you to stop scrolling right now. Because what I'm about to show you is something most people never see coming, until it's too late. Picture this. It's a normal Tuesday morning. You show up to work like you have hundreds of times before. You've done this job for 18 years. You know the equipment. You know the risks. Or at least, you think you do. You open an electrical panel. You reach in with a tool. And in less than 1/8 of a second, less time than it takes you to blink, a fireball erupts with temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. Not twice as hot. Not 5 times as hot. 35,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's right in your face. That's not a movie scene. That happened. To real people. People with families waiting at home. And here's the part that should shake you to your core. Almost every single one of those accidents was completely preventable. My name is Eric, the workplace safety guy, and in this video, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know about arc flash, what it really is, why it keeps killing and injuring people even in 2025, and the real case studies that the safety industry doesn't talk about enough. By the end of this video, you're going to understand something most electricians spend entire careers never fully grasping. If you've ever worked around electricity, or know someone who does, hit that like button right now and stay until the end. What you're about to hear could literally save a life. I'm not being dramatic. I mean that. Let me start by killing a myth that has already killed people. Most people, even experienced electricians, think arc flash is just a big shock. A nasty zap. Something you shake off and walk away from. Maybe you get a burn, maybe you lose a finger. Bad, sure, but survivable. That's the mental model most workers carry around on the job. That mental model is wrong. And that mental model has put people in burn units. Here's what arc flash actually is. Electricity, under normal conditions, flows through a conductor, a wire, a busbar, a terminal. It follows a predictable path. But when something disrupts that path, a tool slip, a loose connection, contaminated insulation, even just a puff of conductive dust, the electricity doesn't stop. It jumps. It ionizes the air between conductors, creating a plasma channel, and in that channel, it releases an almost incomprehensible amount of energy. All at once. In one explosive event. We're talking about an event that can produce temperatures of 35,000 degrees Fahrenheit at the arc point. For reference, the surface of the sun sits around 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. An arc flash is 3 to 4 times hotter than that. Metal doesn't just melt. It vaporizes instantly. Copper conductors turn to superheated gas in milliseconds. That gas expands explosively, creating a pressure wave that can throw a 170-pound person across. And the light is so intense it can cause permanent blindness even to people standing several feet away. And here's what really keeps me up at night when I think about this. None of this takes long. The whole event, from the first arc to the explosion, can be over in 1/8 of a second. That's 125 seconds. Faster than your nervous system can process what's happening. Faster than you can flinch. Faster than you can pull your hand back. By the time your brain registers danger, the damage is already done. Now, according to the NFPA and OSHA's own estimates, there are somewhere between 5 and 10 arc flash incidents every single day in the United States. Not every week. Every single day. Industry-wide research has estimated approximately 30,000 arc flash incidents occurring annually, resulting in around 7,000 serious burn injuries, roughly 2,000 hospitalizations, and hundreds of fatalities per year. And those numbers are almost certainly an undercount, because hospitals classify arc flash victims as burn patients, not electrical injury patients. The data gets lost in translation. In November 2024, OSHA released its first major update to arc flash guidance in over 20 years. 20 years. And the reason they updated it wasn't because things had gotten better. It was because progress had completely stalled. Electrical injuries and fatalities had plateaued. People were still getting hurt. The same mistakes were being made over and over again. And one of the biggest reasons for that? Myths. Dangerous, deadly myths that workers believe and that nobody is correcting. Myth number 1. Low voltage means low risk. This one has sent people to the hospital more times than I can count. Workers assume that if they're dealing with a 120-volt or 208-volt system, the kind you'd find in a standard commercial building, the arc flash hazard is minimal. The truth is that arc flash incidents have occurred and caused serious injury at voltages as low as 120 volts. The energy available in a panel isn't just about voltage, it's about fault current, clearing time, and the system configuration. A low-voltage panel fed by a large transformer with a slow breaker can produce a devastating arc flash event. Myth number 2, if the equipment is off, it's safe. This one is more nuanced, but just as deadly. De-energizing equipment is only the first step. Without a complete lockout/tagout procedure, without physically verifying zero energy, testing for voltage, and establishing an electrically safe work condition, there is no guarantee that the equipment is truly de-energized. Capacitors hold charge. Parallel feeds exist. Human error happens. Every year, workers die because they assumed off meant safe. These aren't fringe accidents. These are systematic failures. And they keep happening because the industry has not done a good enough job of making people feel the reality of what arc flash actually does to a human body. Let me fix that right now. I want to tell you about 3 real people. 3 real arc flash events. 3 very different outcomes. And I want you to understand that none of them woke up that morning thinking it would be the worst day of their life. Case Study 1. Donnie Johnson, Tampa, Florida, August 12, 2004. Donnie had been an electrical contractor for almost 2 decades. He was good at his job. He was confident. He told his wife before they got married, "As long as I have these hands, we will always have money." That morning, a hurricane was threatening Tampa. His assignment was to connect a large semi-trailer mounted generator to a frozen foods warehouse so they could keep the refrigeration running. It was urgent work. The storm was coming. Donnie had all his PP with him. A fully stocked bag sitting right there on site. But he looked at the job, he thought about the heat, he thought about how long it would take to suit up, and he made a decision that he will spend the rest of his life regretting. He thought, and I'm quoting him directly here, "What could possibly happen as long as I am careful?" He was using a motor rotation meter to check the electrical rotation on a 480-volt generator. The problem was, that meter was not rated for live circuit use. The warning label on the device said as much. Donnie hadn't read it. He opened the cabinet, clipped the first 2 leads, reached in for the third, and the meter failed. It blew a puff of carbon into the energized gear. The arc flash that followed was instantaneous and catastrophic. The explosion threw him backward. The heat, which burn unit doctors later estimated at 7 times the temperature of the sun's surface, tore through both of his arms and hands, burning him down to the muscle. His face, head, and neck suffered second-degree burns. He was alone when it happened. The other workers had already fled the scene when the explosion erupted. He pulled himself out of the building in shock, his first confused thought being about how to get the power back on, not yet realizing how badly he was hurt. It wasn't until people started running toward him and reacting with horror that the reality began to sink in. He couldn't reach into his pockets for his phone because his hands were gone. At the hospital, the swelling from the burns caused his airway to close, requiring an emergency breathing tube. Over the following weeks and months, he underwent skin grafts. He developed an E. coli infection in his lungs, then pneumonia, then blood infections. His trachea collapsed from scar tissue. He nearly lost his thumb. He went into complete organ failure from a medication allergy. He survived. Barely. And today, Donnie travels the country telling that story, because he wants people to understand what one moment of complacency costs. Not just physically, but to your family, to everyone who depends on you. His wife identified him at the accident scene by recognizing his boots near his stretcher in the ambulance. She couldn't recognize his face. Let that sink in. Case Study 2. Jason Brozen, April 7, 2009. Jason Brozen was a certified master electrician with more than a decade of experience. He was installing a breaker in a main distribution panel for a new hotel pool control panel. Routine job. He had done it hundreds of times before without incident, without wearing PP, without cutting power. He did it the same way again that day. He was not wearing flame-resistant clothing. He had no gloves, no face shield. He was also working alone, which violates electrical safety best practices for energized work. He was wearing a metal wedding ring. When he tried to fit the breaker, loose parts on the bus bar got too close. The arc flash triggered. According to his own description, he could feel the cycles of electricity ripping through his body. Then everything went dark. He woke up on the floor of a pitch-black room, choking on smoke, with fire alarms screaming around him. He didn't know if he was still on fire. By the time firefighters arrived, he was severely burned across his face and hands. Here's a number I want you to hold on to. A burn of 1.2 calories per square centimeter is considered a serious but recoverable second-degree burn. Jason's burn incident energy was calculated at 37.5 calories per square centimeter. He was in a medically induced coma for 1 week. He was in the ICU for 2 weeks. He couldn't drive for 2 months. He underwent intensive hand therapy for 5 months. He was off work for 7 months. And the lasting damage? He has permanently lost function and feeling in his hands. For life. The arc flash that caused all of that lasted 125 seconds. 1/8 of a second. Jason now works as a corporate safety trainer and NFPA certified electrical safety compliance professional. In 2024, he spoke to 67 different groups. His mission, in his own words, is, plan your work. Work your plan. Follow through with that plan. And do not make exceptions on anything when it comes to safety. Case Study 3, the shopping mall incident, 2 fatalities. This one is different. This one didn't just affect an electrician. It affected everyone in the room. A large department store in a shopping mall had been experiencing intermittent power outages and erratic HVAC behavior. Store personnel called in an electrician to investigate. That electrician, experienced, familiar with the facility, arrived unprepared. The call was unexpected, off schedule. He didn't have his own tools, so he borrowed a multimeter from the store's maintenance department. The problem was, that multimeter was not rated for industrial electrical systems. It could not withstand the voltage transients present in a 480-volt switchboard. The manufacturer provided no warnings about this on the device itself. The misleading wording on the packaging actually implied it was acceptable for that use. The electrician opened the main switchboard. Standing next to him was a store maintenance employee. On his other side was a senior fire department official who had responded to the earlier reports of smoke. The electrician made measurements. Something didn't look right to him. He returned to a phase conductor a second time to recheck. And that's when the meter failed internally, and a fireball erupted from the panel. All 3 individuals were severely burned. Emergency responders arrived immediately. Despite rapid response and medical attention, the electrician died. The fire department official died. The maintenance employee survived. The investigation revealed a cascade of failures, a defective meter not rated for the application, no arc flash labeling on the equipment, no required PP on site, and a situation where multiple people, including someone from the fire department there to assess safety, ended up in the blast zone of an energized 480-volt switchboard. This is what arc flash looks like when systemic failures compound. 1 bad tool. 1 missing label. 1 moment without proper procedures. And 2 people who never made it home. Now I want to talk about the regulatory side of this, because understanding the rules is the only way to understand why people keep breaking them, and what it actually costs when they do. There are 2 primary frameworks governing arc flash safety in the United States. The first is OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA's General Duty Clause requires employers to protect workers from recognized hazards, and their electrical standards under 29 CFR 1910. 335 require appropriate protective equipment for work on energized parts. They also have authority to fine companies for violations. And those fines have been climbing. In 2023, OSHA issued lockout/tagout citations totaling over $20 million in penalties, a 29% increase from the prior year. Lockout/tagout violations alone rank consistently in OSHA's top 10 most cited violations every single year. The second framework, and the one that really matters for arc flash specifically, is NFPA 70E, Standard for Electrical Safety in the Workplace. This is the document that establishes the actual technical requirements for arc flash hazard analysis, PP selection, incident energy calculations, and safe work boundaries. NFPA 70E is the standard that says, if you can de-energize it, you must de-energize it. That rule is not a preference. It's not a recommendation. It is the standard. That last reason is the most dangerous one. Because the absence of an accident does not mean the absence of risk. It just means you got lucky. And luck runs out. In November 2024, OSHA issued its first significant update to ARC Flash guidance in more than 20 years. 4 documents, a comprehensive employer guide, and 3 targeted resources for workers. The update addressed specific myths, reinforced the hierarchy of controls, and emphasized that arc flash hazards exist in both low and high voltage systems. OSHA took this action explicitly because progress had stalled. Electrical injury rates that had declined following the introduction of NFPA 70E had plateaued. Workers were still getting hurt. Companies were still not compliant. The update also called out a workforce reality that nobody likes talking about. Experienced boomer electricians are retiring in large numbers, and their replacements, newer workers with less field experience, are entering the industry at the same time that electrical infrastructure demand is surging. Grid upgrades, EV charging infrastructure, large-scale industrial expansion, all of it is generating more electrical work, at higher complexity, with a less seasoned workforce. That combination, more complex work, less experienced people, inconsistent PP compliance, is a recipe for more incidents. Not fewer. I say this not to be alarmist. I say this because the data supports it. Non-fatal electrical injuries involving days away from work rose by 59% between the 2021 to 2022 period and the 2023 to 2024 period. 59%. That is not a plateau. That is a trend moving in the wrong direction. And most of those injuries, by OSHA's own accounting, involved thermal burns from arc flash events. I want to be completely direct with you here, because this section matters the most. A lot of people think that wearing some kind of flame-resistant clothing is enough. It's not. The protection level required for energized electrical work is calculated based on the incident energy at the working distance. How much energy, measured in calories per square centimeter, could reach your body at the distance you're standing from the potential arc? That number is determined by an arc flash hazard analysis, which involves modeling the electrical system to understand fault current levels, breaker clearing times, and working distances. Without that analysis, you don't actually know what PP level you need. You're guessing. And guessing with 35,000 degree plasma is not a guessing game you want to play. Here's what proper arc flash PP actually looks like when you're working on high incident energy equipment: an arc-rated face shield or arc flash hood, arc-rated gloves rated for the voltage, arc-rated clothing, shirt, pants, and possibly a flash suit, rated to exceed the calculated incident energy at the task. Hearing protection. Safety glasses underneath the face shield. Insulated tools. And none of that PP matters if the arc flash hazard analysis hasn't been done. None of it matters if the equipment isn't properly labeled. None of it matters if the worker doesn't know what PP level corresponds to the label on the panel they're opening. The NFPA 70E labeling requirement says that equipment that could pose an arc flash hazard must be labeled with the incident energy, the arc flash boundary, and the required PP level. Walk through almost any industrial facility in America and you'll find equipment that isn't labeled. Or labeled with information that's 10 years out of date. Or labeled with generic PP categories that the workers haven't been trained to interpret. OSHA observed in its 2024 guidance that arc-rated and flame-resistant PP is not consistently selected, maintained, or worn, even when hazard assessments indicate it's required. That's the compliance gap. Not that people don't know the rules exist, but that in the pressure of day-to-day operations, rules get bent. PP gets left in the truck. Just this once becomes the most dangerous phrase in the electrical industry. Here's the hierarchy you need to internalize. It goes in this order, and you don't skip steps. First, can you eliminate the hazard entirely? Can you redesign the work so it doesn't require energized contact at all? Second, can you de-energize? Can you shut the equipment down, lock it out, verify zero energy, and work in a state where there is no arc flash risk? Because if you can, you must. Third, if energized work is genuinely required, and that should be rare, can you establish proper boundaries, where appropriate PP, and use the right tools for the task? That hierarchy isn't complicated, but it requires discipline. It requires a culture where workers feel empowered to say, "I'm not doing this energized. We need to shut it down." And it requires management that supports that decision rather than pushing back because of production pressure. Because here's the cost of getting it wrong, and I want you to hear this clearly. Jason Brozen, the master electrician I told you about earlier, spent 7 months in recovery. 7 months of his career gone. Medical bills. Lost income.
Permanent disability.
And his company? Lost a qualified electrician. Faced potential OSHA investigation. Dealt with the psychological impact on every worker who knew him. Donnie Johnson's injuries took years to recover from, required dozens of surgeries, and permanently changed the trajectory of his family's life. He had told his wife his hands would always provide for them. Those hands were nearly destroyed. And in the shopping mall case, 2 people died. Their families lost them. The company faced litigation. The meter manufacturer faced legal action. Everyone lost. Arc flash doesn't just hurt the person in front of the panel. It radiates outward, through families, through companies, through communities. The cost of one incident, in human and financial terms, is staggering. I want to end this with something that I think about every time I look at an electrical panel. There's a concept in safety called normalization of deviance. It was coined after the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster by sociologist Diane Vaughan. The idea is this: when you do something unsafe and nothing bad happens, your brain updates its model of what's acceptable. The risky behavior gets normalized. It stops feeling dangerous. And over time, the gap between what's safe and what's being done gets wider and wider, invisibly gradual, until the day the system fails and the consequences are catastrophic. That is exactly what happens with energized electrical work. The electrician who has worked energized panels 100 times without incident doesn't think of himself as reckless. He thinks of himself as experienced. Skilled enough to manage the risk. Fast enough to not need the gear. And he's probably right, for the 99th time, the 999th time. Until he isn't. Jason Brozen said it himself. He had installed breakers like that hundreds of times before without PP. Hundreds of times. The 125-second arc flash that shattered his hands and put him in a coma for a week was no different in setup from any of those other jobs. The electrical system didn't know he was experienced. The plasma doesn't care how many years you've been doing this. That's the thing about arc flash that separates it from most workplace hazards. You don't get a warning. You don't feel it building. There's no near miss where you catch yourself just in time and learn the lesson. There's just normal, and then the worst moment of your life in 1/8 of a second. Zach Spicer, another arc flash survivor, woke up in the Vanderbilt Burn Center completely blind, with doctors telling him they were going to cut away all the dead tissue until they found healthy blood. He begged them to stop. He told them to just let him die. He had been a substation electrician showing his crew a training exercise. He hadn't properly tested or grounded the equipment. One mistake, in a setting where he was the expert, the teacher, the one everyone was looking to. He survived. He got some vision back. And now he travels telling his story, because the only way any of this changes is if people hear it. So here's where I leave you. If you work in electrical, whether you're an electrician, a maintenance tech, a plant manager, or an engineer, I want you to do 3 things. 1. Go look at your equipment. Are your panels labeled? Are those labels accurate and up to date? If not, that's your first action item. 2. Review your energized electrical work permit process. Does one exist? Is it being followed, every time, without exception? This is routine, is not an exception to safe work procedures. There are no routine energized tasks. 3. Check your PP. Not just whether it exists, but whether it's rated correctly for the incident energy on your specific equipment. Whether your workers are trained to select it and wear it properly. Whether it's in good condition. Whether people actually use it. Arc flash is not a theoretical risk. It is not an edge case. It happens 5 to 10 times every single day in this country, and the reason it keeps happening is not because the technology to prevent it doesn't exist. It does. The reason it keeps happening is culture, complacency, and the dangerous comfort of not being hurt yet. Don't wait for 125 seconds to change everything. If this video taught you something you didn't know before, smash that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it tells the algorithm to put this in front of people who need to see it. If you know someone in electrical, a friend, a coworker, a family member. Share this video with them today. Not later. Today. It might be the most important thing you do this week. Subscribe if you want more content like this, real research-backed, no-fluff breakdowns of the stuff that actually matters in industrial safety. And drop a comment below. Have you ever witnessed an arc flash or near miss? Or do you work in an environment where you're concerned about this hazard? Let's talk. I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.